So hello, welcome to AAI's Employability Check-in. I'm going to be your host today. My name is Nick Murray. I'm the Marketing and Partnerships Lead here at AAI. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. Everyone here is going to be on mute. We are going to be recording this session, and when we move to speaker view, none of your faces will be shown, so you don't have to worry about that. If I can encourage you all to pop the speaker view option on in the top right hand corner of your Zoom screen. We are going to be using the chat feature today. We are going to be doing a Q&A at the end of today's event, and if you want to put in your questions at any point throughout the webinar, my colleague Tim is going to be looking at these and we'll tackle that towards the end of the session. So I'd like to just very quickly give an introduction to AAI. For those of you who don't know who AAI is, we are a not-for-profit organization. Here we go. Thank you for bearing with me. So yes, AAI is a not-for-profit organization. We work with employers of all sizes to facilitate full-time, permanent, part-time, short-time work. We used to be known as Adopt an Intern, and we specialize in graduate internships. We've now extended that focus to inclusive recruitment of jobs of all shapes and sizes, up to around £35,000. Why are we here today? The Employment Check-in is a chance to look beyond the headlines and to give a first-hand take of the current job market, to tell you guys what we're hearing, what we're seeing from employers, and what our expert panel of employment coaches, employers, and HR specialists think about what's going on and what we can all be doing now to boost our own employability. For the first session today, we're going to be looking at perspectives of the current job market and what we can expect in the post-COVID landscape. We're going to be giving advice for people who might be looking to change jobs or are looking for jobs at the moment, as well as advice for students and recent graduates. We're going to be touching on what employers are looking now and what we can be doing to upskill and be ready for the job market picking up, as well as a quick fire question and answer with our panel. So I'm going to pop myself into speaker view now. We do have AAI's CEO, Joy Lewis, on the call today. Joy, would you like to just say a couple of words?
Thank you, Nick. Yes, I just really want to welcome everybody. It's great to see so many of you here. Thanks for joining in. I hope you hear some useful stuff today. I'm looking forward to it. And please, just to say, stay in touch. Thank you. Enjoy.
Thanks, Joy. So I'd just like to introduce our panel today. We've tried to gather employment experts, HR professionals, and our AAI employers as well. So first, I'd like to introduce Siobhan Martin, who is the Global Hrbp Director at Aegon Asset Management. Hello, Siobhan.
Hi everyone. It's lovely to be here with you today.
So Siobhan, could you just give us 2 sentences about your work at the moment, please, just to introduce yourself?
So as Nick said, that's the current job that I have, but I also sit on a number of boards external to the firm. I sit on a board for the oldest church in the City of London, and I do a lot of work with Stonewall, and I'm ambassador for Stonewall, the LGBTQ organisation. I also sit on the board of the Institute and Faculty of Actuaries, and I'm a professor at Monash University in Australia.
Okay, busy person. I'd like to now throw over to Lisa Thompson. Lisa is the founder of Purpose HR. Lisa, could you just let us know what sort of thing you're into?
Sure. Hi everyone. So I work mainly with early stage and growth businesses. So our firm has been running for about 6 years now, and we essentially provide an HR function to businesses that are not big enough to have a full-time person in-house. So we run the full range of HR support, and that includes recruitment and growth, and then also managing the employment relations and everything else. So I'm happy to talk to you about my experience in the jobs market today.
That's excellent. We're also privileged enough to be joined by Viana Maya, who is the project lead at AAI's pRESPECT project. Hello, Viana.
Hi everyone, how are you? Can you hear me?
Viana, tell us a little bit about pRESPECT and the kind of work that you do.
Hi, with pRESPECT, we're working with job seekers, individuals, especially marginalised people, to get into work. So that's from the very beginning of your application all the way to aftercare once you're in work. And in between that, we support you with upskilling and just being aware of what's happened with the industry and how we can best support you to get in there.
That's perfect. And we're also joined today by Tim Street, who is the operations manager here at AAI EmployAbility. Hi, Tim. Tim might still be muted.
Yeah, there we go.
Right.
Hi, Tim.
Yeah. So hello everybody. Yes, I work with AAI. My title's operations manager, and I generally day-to-day work with employers that want to use our services to find people like yourselves to recruit for them, but also across a lot of the applicants, helping them get to show their best selves to employers as we work with them. And over the years, it's been an absolute joy to meet hundreds of people like yourselves wanting to find work and to support them to find positions that they really want to get into.
There we go. Okay, so the people that just joined when we were doing those introductions, this is our expert panel of HR professionals and employment coaches. Why don't we do a quick check-in now with everyone here? If you could use the chat function just to tell us what stage of your job hunting journey you're on. And we're going to get to some questions and answers later on. So everyone wants to pop that in. And I'll go straight to our first question. So why don't we start with Siobhan and Lisa, perhaps. Can you guys tell me what you have seen in terms of what's changed since the pandemic hit in the job market, and perhaps what we're looking at now? Siobhan first, perhaps.
Yeah, sure. I think one of the things that has changed, which is all to the better, really, is acceptance about flexible work practices. In the not too distant future, i.e. less than 3 months ago, I had people telling me in my own work, and I heard it a lot externally, that needing to have a flexible working arrangement was somehow potentially a drawback because we were all meant to be in our places of work. Now, whilst that's still true of certain professions and which are very hands-on, for example, maybe being a nurse or a midwife, being there at the moment of birth, there's so many things that can now happen flexibly, and I think that's all been proved. My daughter's a midwife and she's doing a lot of her pre-birth experiences with her mothers and fathers exactly like we're doing that now. So I think it's wonderfully proved that to be not an obstacle that it once was. So what's changed, I think, for all of us is that we can go into job seeking situations feeling less vulnerable about those sorts of questions and less put off. That's
great. Now, Lisa, you work with a range of clients a lot in the kind of tech startups scene here in Scotland. What were you hearing from them at the start of the pandemic, and what sort of thing are they saying now about 10 weeks or so into lockdown as we are now?
Well, interestingly enough, building on some of the points there from Siobhan, particularly about the remote working, we did find that the majority of our clients were able to shift quite quickly to lockdown in terms of entire teams being based from home. And being able to actually set up the working practices to support that, almost to the point that some of them are now talking about when we do return back to the new normal, whichever that will be, actually are they going to spend their resources on big fancy offices, and how much of a priority is that versus other things that they can be spending on. So we're actually seeing more of a shift to different models of remote working. Definitely. We did see quite a immediate freeze in a number of hiring and roles at the start of the crisis. I think it would be, excuse me, I've just got a visitor here. I think it would be, we can't not acknowledge that definitely there's been less vacancies. What we did see was that a number of our clients in the tech space, and also particularly early stage businesses that have raised funding and are at early stages of building a product, they're still needing to hire, they're still growing, they're still looking to bring on all the same skills, and we're actually seeing that start to pick up again a bit more now as well. The other thing I'd say about remote working is actually there's been an acceptance that we can look for candidates a lot more widely. It doesn't necessarily need to be people in the immediate area of employers. So I think that's quite exciting both for candidates and employers in terms of accessing a much wider talent pool.
Absolutely, and certainly there's been lots of areas of business that have been able to flourish during the pandemic. And Tim, I know we've been working with a couple of startups that didn't derail from their growth strategy and actually were hiring like crazy. Do you want to talk a little bit about that kind of appetite?
Yeah, the changes for some employers have been that they have been able to take what they were already doing on a smaller scale, and because everybody's buying from home, to move very quickly to a rapid sort of upscaling of what they were doing due to increased demand. So if you've been following our jobs, our opportunities page on our website, you'll have seen Vegan Kind recruiting a couple of times in May. And what we're trying to do is seek out other employers that are in the same boat, because not everything has stopped. A lot of work's carrying on, and for many people who want an alternative to some of the bigger players in home delivery, let's say, there are firms out there in niches in the market that have really been able to expand, and because they are modern and forward thinking, have been able to, you know, to move quickly to this idea of doing things online completely without feeling that that's difficult or you know, hard to swap into.
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting seeing the shift to a digital first workforce for everyone, with all employers kind of thrown into the home working environment and seeing which ones have been agile enough to embrace it. And a lot of the time it has been the larger companies that have struggled with that process. In terms of what our job seeker audience can be doing now, what do you guys think employers are now looking for, which is perhaps different from what they were looking for before? And I'll open that out to anyone that wants to tackle that. Siobhan's smiling. Do you want to go first, Siobhan?
I'm sorry, I was going to let someone else have a go, but so some of the things that we found very hard to get before, we still find very hard to get. So really researching strongly what is what unique skills people are asking for, and then what unique skill or behaviour or attitude that you have that then you can offer will be useful, I'm sure. Thinking about skills in an adjacent area to the one that you are in, so not I am X, so therefore I have to go for another X, but what is around that, so that you get your foot in, and then you keep your confidence up and you've got a bit of money coming in, and then you can expand and continue to explore for that. I think is advice that I'm often giving even to my own children. My son is furlonged at the moment and is having the exact same worry if his employer folds before he can return. And I'm also thinking about job hoarding. Now, when I describe myself, you heard me say there's a whole bunch of things that I do, and there are others besides. There are, in all of that list, most of those things I do aren't paid. They're things that I do because I have another job and I'm able to use my experience as a queer woman, you know, expanding and helping others, right? But what I'm particularly noticing is, at this very moment, you won't feel the effects just yet, but I'm hopeful that this will come. A lot of people my age, I'm in my 50s and 60s, are saying, do I really need this? I'm tired. I've been working super hard. I am now at home for the first time in forever. I particularly see this in older men, and who are interested in shedding some of those and cutting back. This is going to finally allow other people to come into that space. If they go part-time or indeed retire, that's going to be a big issue for workforces such as mine. I'm wearing another hat. I'm actually quite worried about that. But then that presents an opportunity for other people to come in and at last for some movement to happen in seniority at the top of organisations, which means we can all move up a bit.
That's really interesting. Lisa, what are you seeing in the smaller companies in terms of what skills they were looking for instantly and how much of that has changed?
A couple of things I'd say about that, and obviously it's very specific to the sectors that we work in because we do spend so much time in tech, but what we've actually noticed is that other businesses that are maybe not tech first are actually moving more and more to digital delivery models now as well. So a couple of key areas we're really seeing a spike in is around cyber security. And specialism. I appreciate that's quite niche and specialist, but it's a real growth area, and actually just a willingness to build your digital skills. Social media, people are having to use these channels a lot now, much more because they can't get out and network face to face. So those are areas that are really growing. And I think in terms of what employers are looking for, particularly SMEs and small startups, is they do look for people that are willing to roll their sleeves up, are willing to try something even if they've not necessarily got a depth of previous experience in it, and to wear multiple hats as well. So to be flexible and maybe come into a business and look for ways that can add value that might be out with a traditional role description, but willing to try and willing to learn. I think those are key core values that are actually very beneficial. The inverse of that, I'd say, for a job seeker is consider joining a startup or small early stage company, because the breadth of responsibility, the amount that you can learn, the access you can get to senior experienced people to learn from, is really, really valuable. I had that myself early in my career, and it definitely helped me accelerate. So I wouldn't undervalue that or think that you're settling for something different. It's actually really valuable and beneficial.
I think that's a great point. I mean, that's something that AAI has always championed, is what you can get from a short-term placement. And now in the job market, we're starting to see virtual internships or workplace simulations that companies are offering. And even if it's not the perfect fit for you in the long term, picking up those diverse skills in a short period of time just helps to differentiate you from other people that might have the same 2-1 as you, I think.
Yeah.
So I'd like to throw to Viana. Viana, you've been working with job seekers throughout this period, and you've almost pivoted your own project to focus on what people can be doing in the digital space. Could you contribute to what sort of thing you're encouraging people to focus on at the moment?
Yeah, I'm really enjoying what Lisa said about digital skills. So we've been really working on getting people to take control of the online presence, for example. So we've been looking at diving into understanding your worth, your values, what you're going to bring into a company, and adapting your skills. And it's really important to have that sort of can-do attitude. And to do that, you need to be learning different skills to help you. In the same time, so for example, we get people to create online portfolios using Wix. It's a great way for you to learn digital skills. It's a great way for you to understand how a company would manage themselves. So while you're helping yourself to build your presence, you're also picking up new skills. And these are skills that you can put onto your CV. So it's really about bringing in that rich research, understanding the industry that you want to get into or the industry that you're in, being aware of what's changing, what's going on in the economy, and then adapting to that. So use research and information and webinars such as this to understand how can you help yourself. So, and I've noticed a lot of people saying they're applying for jobs and be made redundant, all sorts of things are going on, but take that moment to also audit yourself, look at your skills. You know, the competition is going to be hard, so how do you add, as Siobhan was saying, then that value, so you're not just one type of person of skill, you can bring in a little extra things that you enjoy and things that's going to be useful in your industry. So these are areas that we've been looking at with some of our individuals in the project, and it's really helping with that, building the confidence and keeping control of the situation as is, because it's changing constantly. So yeah, adapt, evaluate, seek the support that you need, but take control of your online presence. LinkedIn especially, I know a lot of people struggle with LinkedIn, I do myself, but that's where a lot of activity is going on, so you can follow organizations there. So yeah, there's a lot of work in adapting and research, and use that research wisely.
I think we should caveat that by saying, you know, the pandemic and, you know, the wider social issues that we're all seeing has put a lot of strain on people's mindsets, and nobody should feel the pressure to be using this time if they're furloughed or they're in between jobs to upskill or to be creative or to learn Japanese or make banana bread. But if you can use this time to look at what skills you already have and amplify them, you know, we're all developing as professionals all the time, and we sometimes don't even realize what transferable skills we have from past careers and degrees. And there's actually a great resource that I found, I'm going to drop in the chat, which is a Quality Assurance Agency's subject benchmark. And you can essentially just pop in your previous degree, and it will tell you all the skills that people from that degree will experience. So then you can kind of zoom out for a second and think, do I have these skills? How are they going to be relevant in this new digital first landscape? And what can I be doing to amplify that in my dealings with employers? So there's a lot of people in the chat talking about graduating. Have we got any advice for students and graduates who might have had something lined up? There was a really interesting stat that, you know, people that are graduating this year, usually 80% of them have something lined up in terms of a work placement or an internship. And because of hiring freezes, that has dropped to 18%. So a lot of people might have felt that the rug has been pulled out from them. Tim, do you want to maybe start us off about what we can do to reassure these people from the class of 2020?
Yeah, it's a difficult one, because being realistic, as people are already saying down the chat, they have things lined up that have been withdrawn. There is a lot of competition for the smaller number of jobs that are on offer at the moment. So there's no point pretending that this is not going to be a difficult period. But I think pulling together some of the things that people have already said about trying to really focus in on what your strengths and your interests are, trying to keep on top of current trends in different areas of work, but also I think practicing, if you like, playing the game. So people will not get through to the last rounds of employment recruitment processes if you are, you know, half-hearted about it. Employers say to us things like, well, from the people I interviewed, this one was great, this one didn't seem like they were on their A game, this one maybe hadn't done their homework about us. And it's the same things over the years that have been said. When competition is hard for jobs, the things that make you stand out at interview: enthusiasm, having done your research, and being able to show some skills of analysis that say, right, this is what I found out about you as an employer. And these are some of my thoughts about how your business is impacting on people, about how changes might be impacting on your business. So to really, really do your homework well, because other people will be doing that. And to be able to present that in a confident way, you need to practice. You need to practice on your flatmates or your parents or your siblings or whoever you live with that will listen to you answer some questions about experiences that you have had in the context of the requirements of the job that you have applied for. We're quite shy about doing that. Everybody hates public speaking. I don't hate public speaking. Most people hate public speaking. And there's a wonderful statistic that I know that you can twist statistics and it's great, this, but apparently more people are nervous about public speaking than they are about dying. You ask people about that, it's around about 95% of us worry about public speaking. And the only way to get over that is to practice. Practice in front of your Zoom camera so you can watch yourself back. But delivering messages about yourself at this time becomes more and more important when there's larger amounts of competition. So that's one thing. I think the other thing to feel somewhat reassured about is that although there are problems in the job market, there are signs, you know, of employers changing direction, changing to be more online, preparing to come back to life, you know, in the latter stages of this year and into next year. So people are planning. There may not be hundreds of jobs about at the moment, although there are a good number. If you follow the big job portals, they do have work on them. So plans are there, things will move. Everybody knows that they've got to generate activity in the economy, and so the jobs will follow, even if it's slower than you might want it to be. So yeah, like I said, it's going to be tough, but dealing with building yourself up as a product in the market is really important. You can't take any shortcuts on that.
That's great. Lisa or Siobhan?
Well, I wanted to add to that. They're all excellent things that Tim has described, and it makes me think then of the good use of this time in networking and being in contact with people. Thinking about what that contact might bring you, but don't just leave it until I know you, Siobhan, and you might have a job, so I'm going to ask you for immediately. But I've really noticed that there's been a lot more contact from people to me, to others who are employed, in the right kind of nice way. So that it's not, and excuse me, you've got kids and all sorts, and I've got 2 little dogs who are loud. So, then to use the power of your network to be in contact with people, but to think about why that might be useful. Don't just pop up and say, hi, do you have a job? Although that is a good question. Think about how you could demonstrate your usefulness to that person in that moment, because then it might not be right now, but as things open up, they'll remember you as being the person who was there.
Yeah, could I just build on that a little bit, because I think that's such a good point about networking, and I think actually one of the things that I've noticed since the crisis is how generous actually so many people have been with time and life, and that actually there's a real benefit for people early in their career to be looking for maybe role models, potential mentors, or somebody that, and it might not be about asking for a job, actually asking somebody, well, can you share with me some insights about how you got to where you are, so that, you could have that kind of conversation that might lead to opportunities, or just might lead to insights or potential growth. I know I benefited from that a lot in my early career, and it wasn't from people coming to me. It was seeking them out. Somebody that I admired and thinking, well, what could I maybe emulate? What hard things did you go through that I can maybe avoid if I can, learn from that? And I certainly think, and especially if you have more time in their hands at the moment, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take. There's no harm in asking. And if they can't help, maybe they can refer you to someone that can. So use your networks. I think it's so valuable to try, or build those networks if you don't have them yet.
That's great advice. Just quickly, we just said goodbye to Viana. If anyone's got more questions about the work that Viana does, we're going to drop our team email at the end, and we can field some more questions. Do keep your questions coming into the chat, and we'll get them as soon as we can. But Lisa, just to build on that point, I think it's a great benefit of this time, in that so many people are doing free webinars. So many entrepreneurs and thought leaders are doing these free offerings, telling their story, where you can interact with them in a way that you couldn't do at 10 physical meetings per day. You can jump into a webinar, and if it's not what you thought it was going to be, you can jump out and go straight on to the next one, and you can just soak up all the information that you need, take what you need, and build on it. The next webinar we're going to be doing actually is about how to hone your digital first impression. We're going to be looking at LinkedIn profiles and video conferencing and all that good stuff, but certainly following what people are saying about how their businesses are changing and what skills you think you can bring to that, I think is key. The graduates and the job seekers that have lived through this are going to be the ones who help these companies build and rebuild into what the new workplace culture is going to be. So that, I think, is a massive positive. Do we have perhaps some advice for people who are currently on furlough and are thinking they might not have a job to go back to, or perhaps have used this time to reflect on their career path and want to change career, or people that have been made redundant right now. A lot of them are in an unfortunate position, but what is there for them to be hopeful for right now?
I think things will pick up. There's been a couple of comments in the chat asking, do we think that things will pick up over time, or is it going to be a while? There obviously will be some time lag in things following new activity in the economy, and there'll be a lot of changing dynamics within that. If you're on furlough at the moment, one of the things that we have got involved in heavily is matching up people who are on furlough who want to develop their broader outlook and use the skills that they've developed already to help other businesses and charities survive through the next few months. So if you do have spare time while you're furloughed, I would recommend that that's quite a useful activity to get involved in. Not everybody has the same amount of capacity while they're on furlough. You know, some of us have got kids, some of us have got responsibilities, what have you. But if you do have some hours in a week and you think I'd like to make new contacts and use the skills that I've got, then that's an avenue to consider. In terms of redundancy, it's never an easy situation at all. I mean, personally, over the years, I think I've been made redundant 4 times in my career. None of them got any easier, but they always lead you on to newer things. And it's a time to really reflect on what you have taken from your last position and to be able to use that as evidence and ammunition to fire into what you do next. So, and I can't stress this enough, the importance of being confident about the skills that you have exercised in your you know, all your previous experience, whether it be voluntary, academic, or working. You need to be able to pull out that here's my experience, here are the skills that I exercised within it, and this is the impact I had applying those skills in a workplace. Employers want to know what you will be able to do for them for the money they pay you. And that's about impact. It's not about I was good at this thing. It's this is what happened when I applied those skills and abilities, and it either went very successfully and this is what I learned, or it didn't go so well and this is what I learned and this is what I'd change about it next time. So developing what you've done and all your experiences, when you're doing that, don't forget to think about the impact that you have had, because that's what future interviewers will want to know from you.
Good point, Tim, thank you.
A couple of things I would just chip into that is if people are going through redundancy at the moment, I know how difficult that is, both, you know, personal perspective. I actually started my business on the back of having been made redundant. So, you know, sometimes, you know, it can lead to other better opportunities. I think the other thing is people should be aware there's not a stigma attached to being made redundant. It's usually a business decision where a business would rather not lose anybody, to be honest, and so it's not a personal reflection on the person, so it's usually about the role. So, you know, don't be ashamed to go out to people and say, you know, I've been made redundant and I'm looking for my next move. You know, sometimes there's a stigma attached that really people need to let go. And I think the other thing is, you know, be aware of your rights and be aware of your entitlements, and also approach your employer if they are making redundancies. Are they going to offer any support, such as outplacement coaching or support, for example, because that can be a helpful route to help you rebuild your confidence and approach the market. And, you know, many forward-thinking employers will offer that as part of their packages, and it's something to take advantage of if you can.
Lisa, I hadn't heard of that. What is outplacement coaching, just for the audience here?
Yeah, so with our clients, if they are making redundancies, one of the things that we encourage them to do is offer a bank of time to individuals after they've left the organisation, where they'll get support with things like their CV, with job applications, with looking at the market, and actually just a bit of personal coaching support to help them think about moving forward, because it is a difficult negative experience to lose your job. But actually, if your employer offers that kind of support, take it up, you know, and do try to get value from it, because it's an objective person that's there to support you.
That's excellent. Siobhan, anything to add for people navigating the job market for new opportunities at the moment?
Yes, indeed. I just popped a little something in the chat, and I'll expand on that a little bit more. If it is possible for you, and I realise that this is not possible for everyone, but there are lots of smaller groups who are desperate to have non-executive directors, and you might suddenly say, oh, well, you know, isn't that for someone who's incredibly experienced and so forth? Potentially, but there are lots of groups for who they need somebody or some bodies in there to help navigate that organisation. Many of those roles won't be paid. So again, I realise I'm saying this for somebody who, you know, that's a privilege. However, they usually don't ask a lot of your time, but what they could give you is the great opportunity to a network and an opportunity to meet some new people, to show that you're applying your skills. And this is where I think about volunteering organisations. I'm thinking about the Girl Guides, for example, for faith groups, for homeless charities, etc., etc., etc. So you're giving something of yourself that also gets you out and about if you're able to leave the home. To once we can start meeting with one another again, it gives us physical connection, or connection in this way, and it gives us an opportunity to show what we're made of and to create new connections. You might think, oh, I'm too young for that, or I haven't done enough of it. There are loads of people who are loads of organisations out there who want the youth voice, who want different perspectives. They don't want to see another person like me who's been around the block. And so get yourself out there. A great place to start with that. It goes by the title of Women on Boards, but it isn't just for women. That it was started for that purpose. But they are an organisation in the UK. They also operate in Australia, but we're here in the UK right now, and they advertise all sorts of positions and jobs, but they also give you skills, opportunities to help shape your CV for directing roles, and some training and so forth to grow in that way. And that's potentially a really nice way to expand your connections and your opportunities.
I think that's great. And this is a topic we're going to be expanding on in 2 weeks. Our next one is using this time and using your passion projects to help differentiate you and make you stand out a bit more to other people that might have a similar academic background to yourself. So it's great that you guys have all touched on that. That kind of optimistic mindset leads me on to our final question before we go to the Q&A, in terms of what our job seeker audience can feel optimistic about. And Siobhan, you started off talking about how remote working had become, everyone's been forced into this, so people are being a lot more flexible, and staff well-being has been such a focus throughout this time. What other positives do you think are going to help shape the new workplace for us all?
I think there's also the opportunity here for people to see beyond it has to look exactly like this. I used to hear a lot that, you know, we only wanted someone who was from Oxbridge. We only wanted someone who had, you know, 15,000 years of experience, you know, all those funny things that people write on CVs that they can be very off-putting if you're, you know, looking for a job, but actually a lot of them really don't honestly require that. And I think that has really opened people's hearts and minds. Not everybody, it won't have changed the entire job seeking market, but it certainly will have opened some hearts and minds up. So see that opportunity, insert yourself, always be thinking about how can I be useful to them. So think about it from their side of the story, rather than pushing yourself forward about everything that you've got. What have I got that is useful for you? And let me describe it to you in that particular way.
Excellent. Lisa, perhaps?
Yeah, I was just having a quick look at the chat there, and somebody had mentioned about maybe one sector and looking into moving sector. I think employers have had their assumptions challenged on a number of fronts, and one of them is definitely around working location. We've got clients that said to me, "Oh, couldn't have people based permanently from home." Well, now we've had it for 12 weeks and what business has carried on and things are working, and so they're much more flexible about what they would consider in the future. And it doesn't, exactly like Siobhan said, it's not got to be a fixed, this is what we need and this is how it is, and actually there's more flexibility. So I would say transferable, thinking about transferable skills is definitely something. So what could you take from, say, the tourism sector there that somebody asked about? I would say there must be really strong customer service skills potentially from that. What can we use to sell and draw on that there? The other good thing that we've been seeing in the market is some of our, and it sounds counterintuitive, but bear with me, but some of our clients are having to look at costs, they're having to manage their costs, and they're restricted on cost. Actually, sometimes that means that they might look at bringing in people and developing their own talent rather than bringing in people with a very set profile at a certain level in their career that actually might not be affordable those businesses at the moment. So that might open up earlier stage opportunities for people starting out in their career and opportunities for progression and learning. So I think that's a positive to look at too.
Yeah, and that goes back to what we were saying about small teams and bringing in people who have got a range of skills and might not be an expert at one thing, but can adapt quickly. And I think being adaptive and being resilient and being able to adjust to change is something that we've all built up throughout this time without even knowing it. You know, the Corona coaster has taken us all emotionally up and down, and I think we've all learned a lot about ourselves, and there's a lot of that we can take forward as professionals. Tim, just on the remote working piece, people in the chat might not know that AAI is actually a fully remote team and has been for the last 10 years. And with that comes a lot of trust and autonomy and responsibility and communication. Tim, could you maybe talk a little bit about how our job seekers can embrace this and perhaps present themselves as good communicators and trustworthy employees to employers that perhaps are still struggling with that dynamic?
Okay, so yeah, and it kind of follows on as well from Adriano's question about changing direction, because it's all tied up together. How can we prove to employers that if we maybe don't have the experience that they're looking for, that we are somebody that they want? And so using the examples maybe of your academic background, because most people on the call I feel will probably have been to university and graduated. So one of the things that university teaches people is that they have to direct their own learning, and they have to complete that. If they want to do well going through university, they have to project manage their work. And all employers want good mini project managers. So we can see a task that needs to be done, analyse what needed, and the timelines that are important for it, and show that we've completed it. Now, what I'm not saying, like some CV templates will show you, is to say, university has prepared me for this, blah, 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 and it showed me how to do it. What we're looking for is real explanation of the way that you manage tasks and deliver them with that impact that I spoke about earlier. So really applying thought to how you take responsibility seriously and how you deliver things that you say you're going to deliver. That's what people want to hear when we talk about working from home. They don't also just want to hear all the good stuff. So we always ask when we're interviewing people, what do you think the difficulties will be of working in a remote team? And we expect people to be able to analyse what they personally will find hard and how they will overcome that. So don't think that you have to have everything being glossy and woohoo, I'm brilliant at all this. What you need to be able to do is to show that you analyse situations and can pick a path forward that you will then monitor and evaluate and adjust if necessary. So for us working from home for the last 10 years, we've had to change the style of communication we've used over time. When we've had different people come work in our team, everybody approaches this slightly differently. And some people need much more communication on a day-to-day basis than others do. So it's about being open to where people are starting from and working to what they need, and looking at that in both directions. I think one of the advantages that that a younger job-seeking audience has over people like myself is the second nature of the digital user experience. So for me, when I hear that sentence, I sort of go, how do I work out how people give and receive digitally without human communication? What's that experience like? How intuitive is it? Whereas for people who have been doing this, you know, from the age of 11, 12, and practice on different platforms and communicate in different apps and use things like that, use all of that, build on it, think about how it's impacted on you and your friends, and turn it into, again, evidence that you can analyze. So there's there are lots of positives about the situation at the moment if we can see them. And it's very difficult sometimes to see them past, I don't have a job, I don't have experience, I might get made redundant. Those big in-your-face problems that people are feeling. So developing our personal resilience and applying it to our job-seeking activity is something that's got to be done.
Thanks for that, Tim. We're just about to move to the Q&A, and I've got one last point I want to get in there, and that is, you know, AAI has always been very focused on inclusion and diversity and this idea of equality of opportunity. And with the global discussions of race and inclusion, I'd just like to ask our panel how they think employers are going to respond to this in terms of their diversity policies, and what positive that gives to the job market right now.
Again, this is being realistic about this. Attitudes to race or any other difference take time for individuals to work through. So although we've got a massive worldwide movement at the moment saying things are wrong, we need to fix them. And the beauty of that at the moment is that that's coming from a lot of different sources. And there are a lot of new people involved in that argument that have not felt the need to stand up and be counted before. Employers will find it more difficult to discriminate on the basis of difference. And that will move things slowly, but you know, there's still an element of personal responsibility in this for job seekers. We as an organisation have been working with employers for the last 3 or 4 years now on really specific projects around opening up their thoughts and their attitudes to employing different people from different backgrounds and different places. And you know, the structure needs to go on like that for organisations like ours and others to deal with that stuff. But individually, it makes no difference to your personal presentation of who you are and what you can do. So I think not being sidetracked by it in terms of employability and job search is important, and letting some of the bigger structures be handled by, you know, where it needs to be as the answer. But yeah, certainly in the moment right now, people are questioning what they can say, how they can present themselves. And it's an added layer of complexity, certainly. But things are changing for the better, slowly.
And indeed, and I can mirror that. For many, many, many years, I've heard, oh, Siobhan, it would be great to hire more women or people from a different ethnicity or people who have different sexual orientation or gender identities, but they don't exist, or a version of that. We know we do exist. We're here now. So put your hand up and put yourself forward with those aspects of yourself in a more confident way right now. Show people that you exist and you're here and you're fantastic and you do a great job. Whilst it's been a negative, let's take the opportunity to turn those things into more of a positive.
So I just want to add to that as well, that I do think a lot of businesses are now doing more introspection around their own practices than maybe they have done before, and that it's been recognised more and more that to have a diversity and inclusion policy in a handbook, or to have run 1 year annual training for our managers actually are we doing enough, and making sure are we ticking the boxes, or are we really living and breathing these values within our business? What I've also seen is that there's been more push inwardly, and if we look, for example, at some of the actions that are happening in huge companies like Facebook, where actually the leaders of businesses are being held to account by their own workforces to say we must do better. And so, one of the things that I was really delighted to see recently was one of my clients, the CEO sent an email to the entire business to say, look, we know we've done things, but we are not doing enough. What else can we do? I was looking for the team, I was looking for us to all push and suggest, because he was holding his hands up to say, the stats speak for themselves, we're not where we need to be, and we want to learn and we want to do better. So that's not going to solve the problem, but it's a starting point that I think is not maybe a conversation that I would have seen in organisations 3 or 4 years ago. And so, I think we have to keep working within that, but there's so much more to be done.
I think that's excellent, and that's definitely, for me, one of the positives of the pandemic is not taking people for granted and being person-centered and compassionate and seeing people as individuals. Yes, we're all in the same storm, but we're all in different boats, and seeing what people bring in their own individual boat and appreciating their circumstances is going to make for a richer and more productive workforce going forward. Just on the diversity topic, some breaking news from us today is that we're working with the Scottish Government on a support programme called Diversity Works. It is a 6-week support programme focusing on employment and finance and home life for people from minority ethnic backgrounds who have been disproportionately affected by the pandemic. So I'm going to link the information to that in the chat in a minute. We've just got a couple of minutes for the questions that came in. Tim's been monitoring them. Can I throw it over to you, Tim, for a couple of the themes that have come out that we've not touched on yet?
Okay, so a couple of quite specific questions. So Siobhan and Lisa, jump in really quickly on these. Do you think these days that progressing and doing a master's degree in your chosen subject is an advantage?
Well, I have certainly seen a number of people that I'm talking about doing that just because they want to take a bit more time before going into the jobs market. They want to invest in their skills. I think it really, that's a broad brush question, and it's probably worth talking to people in your industry and just working out actually how does that relate to this, the areas that I might want to go in.
Yeah, quite industry specific even, I would agree. But thanks for that question. Another one is, how can people use to their advantage the fact that they may have been offered a job that was then withdrawn because of COVID-19? What's the best way to capitalise on that prior offer?
Well, first of all, don't feel shy about telling other people about that. That's okay. That's the situation. You were almost there and it didn't happen. So you can be open about that. That'll also give some confidence to this other, the new employer, that something good was happening for you, and the halo effect will continue. Also, keep strong contact with those other people. They obviously did love you, and if circumstances have been different, wanted to have you. So things may return or change or morph for them. We've certainly had that situation in my own firm, and I'm starting already to feel some of the things open up and change, and I see that in other organisations too.
Okay.
That's good advice. Don't burn bridges.
Yeah, definitely. We got time for one more, Nick?
Yes, why not?
Okay, we talked, Lisa, you especially earlier talked about maybe pursuing the potential of working for smaller firms, startup firms. How do people then make the leap from the small business world into the corporate, larger organisations? What arguments can they use to make that leap when it's time to change?
don't do a huge amount of hiring for large firms. I don't know if Siobhan, you might have a better answer on that.
Oh, sorry, Tim, I was answering someone else's question. Do you want to ask me?
What do you like to hear, Siobhan, given your corporate background in recruiting? What are the things you want to hear from people who've only worked in smaller businesses that would reassure you about inviting them into your bigger world?
Yeah, do you know, it's a funny thing about little and big. I think that's more in the imagination than the reality, to be perfectly honest. We all want to hear that somebody loves us, you know, us, the employer, and how they could be useful to us, whether we're little, medium, big, or whatever's going on for us. So if you present yourself with that achievement-oriented language, I know these things, I have applied them and achieved this, and then bring that to bear into the situation in a confident way, that works wherever you are.
Yeah. And I think I would just make sure that you get across, if you're seeking to move from one type of employer to another, be clear about what are your objectives in that, you know, and what's the pull factor for you. And then, as I mentioned on earlier, just talking about things that you've maybe been able to take end-to-end responsibility for. What have you had exposure to? What things, maybe like a budget or things that you might not have necessarily had if you'd started in a larger organisation. How can you sell that and sell the benefits of what you can do based on that?
Great, thank you.
There we go. So we've got time now before we wrap up. I would love to do a group photograph of everyone that's come along today. If people that have got their cameras off, if you could sort out your hair and put your camera on for a second, and I'll give you a 10-second warning for that. And I'd love to do a group photo. So grab your cup of tea and give us a cheers or a wave for that just before we do a wrap up. So here's everyone. Hello. Oh, what a lovely bunch you are. That's perfect. So let's have a little wave there. Hello. And we'll say thank you so much for all you lovely people coming along to join us today. Just very quickly, I will now put what I promised you guys into the chat. There is the link to our next employment check-in in 2 weeks, which will focus on your passion projects and developing your digital persona to make a good first impression. We've got the link to our new Diversity Works program. We have got the link to sign up for our job alert emails so you can keep track of all the great opportunities that we have at AAI, and do continue to follow us on social media for all your job seeker needs and advice. I want to say a big thank you to our panel today, Viana, who had to go, Lisa Thompson from Purpose HR, and Siobhan Martin from Aegon Asset Management, as well as our own maestro, Tim Street. Thank you all so much for joining us. If you have more questions or things you'd like to see covered in a deeper dive on these sessions, please do email us at team@aai-employability.org.uk. Keep your questions coming in, do sign up for the next event, and we'll see you all next time. Thank you.